Welcome everybody to the SRU podcast with me and my guy Will Royal. Hey Will, how you doing today, man?
Can't complain. We had just got done with week 0. We're looking for week 1 just in a few days. I'm excited. I'm like a kid on Christmas, even though I'm Jewish. But gotta feel something.
Yeah. Hey, you could have just threw Hanukkah out there. I don't know, but why Christmas? Today we have the big.
It's a once a day.
I guess. Today we have the Big 12 preview, and we're going to start with the AP polls. Take it off. Go ahead and Will let you start that.
Yeah. So coming in week 1, we have Oklahoma at 9, Baylor at 10, Oklahoma State at 12, and just on the outside is Texas. Which, if you look at the coaches poll, one coach actually voted them in. Who do you think it was?
Probably the Texas coach.
They don't vote for themselves.
Oh, they don't?
I can tell you that.
Nah. I couldn't tell you. Nick Saban?
Probably.
Yeah.
Just get a laugh out of it.
Yeah.
But how do you think these three teams will fare? And do you think we could see one of them in the playoffs?
I could see one of them making the playoffs if they go undefeated. Well, Oklahoma has a pretty hard schedule. So if they go undefeated, I can see them, or losing one game and winning the Big 12. I can see them making the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, and before we go and dive into these teams, obviously we had realignments. In 2024, we're losing the two big ones, Oklahoma and Texas, but next year we are going to add BYU, who's an independent, and then Central Florida, Cincinnati, and Houston from the American. Yeah. 14 teams next year. How do you think that's going to fare out?
It's just going to be the bootleg SEC. They finally got a Florida team, and I guess they added another Texas team who basically played against these teams back in the day when we had the Southwest Conference, which Arkansas was in, and BYU finally making it to a conference, and they actually have a real hard schedule this year with a lot of ranked teams. I can see them BYU making a bowl, but they will definitely be making an impact to the Big 12 after these two teams leave. But I don't think it's going to be that big of a conference. I feel like it's going to be a little worse version of the ACC, and I don't see any of them making the playoffs really. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see when it happens.
Yeah, obviously we have a lot to talk about, and we're going to begin off with the defending Big 12 champions, and that is Baylor. This game kind of was a surprise. We didn't expect Baylor to do much under second-year head coach, or last year was the second year, but Dave Aranda. But they won the Big 12. They beat Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl, albeit Ole Miss didn't have Matt Corral half the game.
Without Matt Corral. Well, he played like one quarter, one half?
Something like that. Yeah. Do you think he's the real deal in Waco?
Well, he's shown like they won the championship last year. Maybe if they didn't lose one of the games they lost, they probably would have even made it to the playoffs, and Cincinnati would have been bumped out. But I guess that's good for Cincinnati and bad for Baylor. But yeah, I think he's the real deal. Their recruiting class is not good for a team that you would think would be contending for the playoffs or who had such a great year last year. But I know our friend JP, who we were hoping would be on the podcast today, wouldn't want us to say anything good about Baylor. But they have bounced back since the allegations they had a few years ago, and they're losing their QB with Gary Bohannon. But the guy who won their Big 12 championship MVP, the backup, he's back this year.
Yeah, they are getting Blake Shapen back. They are going to bring back, if I can pull this up, Craig Williams. Defense-wise, they have Siaki, Aika, and Dylan Doyle. Honestly, this could be like a really good Baylor team. Like you said, BYU is joining the conference, but they are going to play them this year. That's their big non-conference game. If they, steadily beat BYU, then I think Baylor is in a good position. but you also have to remember there are other good teams in the Big 12. It's not just one or two good teams
Yeah.
as it was last years past.
And the thing about BYU, they play them the second week, which will help Baylor because I expect BYU to win the first week for whoever they play and to stay ranked or even get moved up. So that would definitely help them at the end of the year when it comes to playoff talk if they have a resume to even be in the conversation. So
yeah. Now, as we go on a new era in Waco, we possibly seeing the end of an era in Ames. Iowa State. Last year it was kind of a iffy year. They had two really good players that the college football world really knew well represented, and that was Brock Purdy and Brees Hall. They're gone. Do we see, what can we see in this post Purdy Hall era in Iowa State?
those are big losses in Iowa State. I can see them maybe making a run for a bowl game, but honestly, those are huge losses because they were the anchors for that team, and they were literally everything. For Iowa State, they had a Iowa State type of recruiting class with number 6 in the conference and 39 in the country. You don't really expect much from Iowa State because they're pretty decent every year when it comes to sports for basketball and football, but it's Iowa State. Like you don't really expect much from Iowa State.
Yeah. Matt Campbell's the head coach. Kind of see a lackluster year without Purdy and Hall. Do you think we could possibly be seeing change?
Them changing now, just because he's been good with Iowa State. Unless if he has a good year with Iowa State, I can see him leaving because that's job is just a job you put on your resume and be like, hey, I was a head coach here. This is what I've done. I'm ready to move up to a bigger program if like a bigger program such as like Mississippi State if I forgot their coach's name, but I know it. Yeah, if he gets fired next year, I can see him them looking at him if he has a good year.
Yeah, I think Iowa's gonna be that middle of the pack team. They could pull off some surprises, but they could drop a easy game.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the punchline of the conference, Kansas. Shout out to my boy Glenn and the boys over in Big Mac Land, mostly for putting up for 4 years of this atrocious style of football. Thank God you won basketball. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Kansas is definitely a basketball school. We all know that with Bill Self and them winning a championship last year. Do you think they can beat Texas again and everyone can laugh at Texas and you'll be like, Mom, what is wrong with this Texas program? And maybe Sark will get fired this year if they have a season like they had last year. But we will talk about that once we get to Texas. But yeah, do you think they can beat Texas again?
No, I think last year was an overtime game. I think that was Sark's part. We'll talk more about it when we get to Texas, but I think that was a fluke game. Lance Leipold came in last year, took over the mess of Les Miles because he left because of allegations, popped out when he was at LSU.
Yeah.
But I think Kansas, they're not going anywhere. If you look at, yes, they finished last in recruiting, but also they're a below 100 recruiting class. There are teams in the FCS level that finished higher than them.
Yeah. Hey, Jackson State got the number 1 overall recruit, and
exactly.
They're higher than them. But we will talk about Jackson State when the week 1 because they have a pretty big game, and I want to talk about an HBCU school. But yeah, like Kansas is falling under a FCS school, which is kind of sad. Like you can't even recruit your own state. I know there's some decent players in Kansas. It has to be at least 1 or 2 4-stars.
Yeah, well, most likely going to have Jalen Daniels be the starter. I think he could come in and do, somewhat good job. Defense, we were talking about it while we're writing up the script for this. They have the second worst in so many categories on defense. They're bringing in Marvin Grant, however, from Purdue on, I believe the defensive line. I think he could, be somewhat of an improvement. Being the Big Ten is that good, really good defensive school, and the Big 12 defense is,
Yeah.
But moving on, I'm going to go across state from Lawrence to Manhattan, Kansas State. Last year they had a surprising year. They went 8-5. They dominated LSU in Ed Orgeron's last game. Do you think they can make a bowl again this year?
I don't think I have them making a bowl, but hey, they could. Like Deuce Vaughn is supposed to be some big guy in the nation, so I'm ready to see how he plays because your best friend, Big Game Boomer, has hyped him up a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about Big Game Boomer for those who don't know. I sent you the list he made out today about like top teams in the conference. He has TCU in dead last and the likes of Vanderbilt over Ole Miss.
Yeah, he's honestly some of his lists are good. Most of them are a joke. He hates on Alabama, like the city of Tuscaloosa. He hates on the city of Tuscaloosa so often, and I know you're you wish you could talk to him. Well, just go ahead and get those Twitter fingers out. Go ahead and slide in his DMs and just give him a little bullying.
Yeah, let's just say him and Desmond Howard are on like the same wavelength when it comes to predictions.
Yeah.
But anyways, back on Kansas State, I do think they are gonna like kind of the same way as Iowa State. They are gonna be a middle of the pack team. They could sneak into a bowl game. It's just gonna be more reliant on what Vaughn does if he lives up to those expectations that people have been putting on him. And they do have Missouri coming in from the SEC as second week. We possibly could, if they get that one, I think they are in good position for the rest of the season.
Yeah, Missouri. A lot of people thinking that Vanderbilt is going to beat Missouri, and I don't know if Missouri's is just not looking good this year, or they just think that's a weak link in the SEC.
Yeah. Moving on, we're now going on to possibly the favorite of the conference, Oklahoma, despite a mass exodus of recruits and players. Lincoln Riley left to the Pac-12. They brought in longtime assistant Brent Venables, who used to be at Oklahoma. He was a longtime assistant at Dabo at Clemson. He's finally getting this head coaching job, which I like. I've been, wanting him to take a head coaching job. To me, at least, he's like Eric Bieniemy of college football world. He's finally getting that chance.
Yeah.
But they did lose out Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams. So what could we be seeing from these new players realizing that they have to step up now?
I think they have a great quarterback coming in, and Venables, he's passed up jobs. Like I think he was just waiting for like the perfect job or the job he wants to lay his hat down and be like, hey, I'm gonna help this program, the one that I love and I worked for before, and make them a national championship because they've been close with Lincoln Riley and they just hadn't won a national championship. So I think he's going to do a great job. Do I think they're college football contenders this year? Yeah, I can see that happening, and I can't wait until they join the SEC. And if the SEC does pods when Texas and Oklahoma join, they're going to most likely be in Arkansas's pod. And I can't wait to be able to play them every year like we used to when we were in the Southwestern Conference.
Yeah, realistically, a pod of those two teams, Arkansas and A&M, I think will be amazing.
Yeah. And I think it would help Arkansas actually be a national championship contenders because we won't have to face Alabama every year and lose to y'all. Hey, but last year we came close. But yeah, I can't wait until Oklahoma joins the SEC. But this isn't the SEC talk. This is the Oklahoma talk in the Big 12.
This is the Big 12, yeah. They do play Nebraska, which is like a long time rivalry that we saw leave when Nebraska left for the Big 10. That's week 3 in Lincoln, but I do think Nebraska, after what we saw on Saturday, is not the same Nebraska team of the late 90s under Tom Osborne. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, they're definitely not going to be that good. I just see a blowout, a little high, Power 5. Hey, we got this Power 5 team on our resume this year, even though everyone knows Nebraska sucks. But Oklahoma had a great recruiting class this year. Number 2 in the conference and number 8 in the country, which is really surprising because they lost a lot of players. Yeah, they lost a lot of recruits. They probably would have
all their recruits to USC.
Yeah, they probably would have had the number one recruiting class this year in the nation if all those recruits didn't leave. And hey, he came in and did a great job in recruiting.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the other Oklahoma team, whereas the one in Norman has a new coach. The one in Stillwater has year 17, I think, now.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State, they were in the Big Ten championship last year. They lost on that last second stop by Baylor, but they went on to beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl, still going 12-2. Do you think we could possibly see them again in the Big Ten championship in Dallas?
Yeah, I can see them being really good this year. I just wonder how long is Mike Gundy going to be at Oklahoma State? Like, do you think
I think he's gonna be there for a good while. Like, if he's been there that long, like longer than as long as Saban has.
Yeah.
Like, I think at that point, even though you've never won a national championship, I still think you've done so much for the program that you basically can't get fired.
Do you think he ever get an NFL offer?
No, not at this rate. I think he's stuck in college.
Yeah, I can see that too.
But speaking of schools that have long-time coaches, before going to the next team, Oklahoma State, I do think is a really good program. I think they are going to be just as strong as they were this past year. Maybe not as good, but I do think Oklahoma, that game it's in Norman this year. I think that's going to be like the real deciding factor of who goes on.
Yeah, I can see them. It's three teams that I really see that can probably make a push for the Big 12 championship, and that's Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. But Oklahoma State, they were close to making it to the playoffs last year. If they would have won the championship game, they probably would have made it, depending on how the voters felt about Cincinnati and Oklahoma State.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
That's a big what if.
Yeah, for sure. But
all right. Moving on to a team that just departed their longtime coach after a disappointing year, and that is TCU. Shout out to our boy JP. I know you're a big Gary Patterson fan, but change was needed.
Yeah, I guess you could say a change was needed. They have a statue of Gary Patterson at that campus. I've seen it personally. It's pretty funny, and it's pretty life-size. It's pretty short, I would say. But guess what? JP, I wish he was here on the podcast today. He hates Gary Patterson now. He's ready for this new era of TCU. He doesn't think they're gonna have a good year this year, but I can see them potentially making a bowl game, just because TCU, just the history of TCU is they always have a pretty decent team, and that they actually had some great teams that could have made national championships, but just got overlooked by bigger schools. But this year, they didn't have a good recruiting class. Number 8 in the conference, number 45 in the nation. And last year, they didn't even make it to the bowl. They were one game away. So I would call this year a rebuilding year for TCU and their new coach, Sonny Dykes. How would you feel about TCU this year?
I do like the Sonny Dykes hire coming in from SMU. I think, kind of staying within the city, or at least in
the area, yeah.
Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. I think that's a really good hire, at least in terms of keeping stuff in state. TCU, I think, yes, they barely missed out, but I do think that they are going to make one on the slightest bit. Their opening is against Colorado at Colorado, and they also have SMU at SMU later in the season, which I think Sonny Dykes' homecoming is going to be an underrated game. I think that one's going to come down to the wire.
Yeah. And
but other than that, I think they are going to struggle a little bit conference-wise, but I do think it will be enough just to get that postseason feeling.
Hey, maybe they can become the power of the conference once Oklahoma and Texas leave.
Who knows?
Yeah. So next, we're going to their in-state rivals, a team that hadn't beaten them in a little while, Texas. Texas, they have the number 1 recruiting class in the conference, number 5 in the nation, which is great. But Texas always have a good recruiting classes. And guess what? None of them do anything. Last year, 0 Texas players got drafted, which is crazy because this is the college of the state. they have probably the biggest boosters in the state, and
Well, those don't mean anything now because we have NIL.
yeah, and
But
now, do you think their 5-7 um, record last year, if they have that again, you think your ex offensive coordinator will be on the hot seat next year?
I don't think so. I think it's his second year coming in, and this he finally gets his recruiting class in order. Like this is his recruiting class, and he has a lot to show. He finally got Quinn Ewers to transfer him from Ohio State. And you had two really good freshmen last year, Bijan Robinson and Xavier Worthy, who are going to be explosive with Quinn Ewers as starter. On top of that, they have the son of, not the son, but
Nephew,
the grandson and the nephew of a football legacy in Arch Manning coming in 2023. In my opinion, he's not coming to Alabama. Not really. We have already a good amount of quarterbacks.
All right.
But I do think that this is possibly Texas' best chance since the year they went to the championship and lost to Alabama.
Yeah.
On paper, this team that is supposed to make that push, and it would be very surprising if they don't. I think Texas has that ability. They do have Alabama, which is possibly the game of the year, unless it's an absolute blowout in that case. But, I do think their other big game is Oklahoma in Dallas, and I think they possibly could win that, with the players that they have against, all these newish players at Oklahoma. I think that Texas is, I don't want to say they're back, like the whole Sam Ellinger Longhorn Nation, we're back. I do think this is a step in the right direction, though, for Texas.
Honestly, for me, hey, we beat them last year, second game of the season, and it was big. Just because our rivalry we have, that's literally our biggest rivalry, but we don't play them every year just because the history between Arkansas and Texas. I can't wait for them to join the SEC next year, but Quinn Ewers, he was #1 QB coming in when he came 2 years ago, and he enrolled early to Ohio State. He's supposed to be he's supposed to be that big guy, that guy who's supposed to save Texas, and they always have some guy that's supposed to save Texas. But he's supposed to be the big deal since Vince Young, and hey, they won the national championship then.
Do I think they're going to win a championship this year?
No, not at all.
Do I think they are going in the right direction though? Absolutely.
Yeah, but I see Texas as the USC of the South. A team who gets the best recruits and don't do crap with it, don't even make it to the playoffs or like national championship contender type teams.
Yeah, I would put Miami in the same category as well. I've been saying this every single preview. There's always that one team that gets overhyped and just never performs. The Big 10, Big 12 version of this is clearly Texas, but I think that stigma ends this year.
Yeah. So next, we're going to Texas Tech in Lubbock. They had the #7 recruiting class in the conference, number 43 in the nation, and they just came from a dub in the Liberty Bowl against Mississippi State, which we mentioned earlier with Mike Leach, and they also beat their ex-head coach Mike Leach in that Liberty Bowl, and now they have a new coach in Joey McGuire, his first year, and Tyler Shaw has been named the starting QB. So how do you feel about Texas Tech coming up this year?
It is going to be a little bit of a regression, I think. But Tyler Shaw, he's a transfer coming in from Oregon. I think he's going to do well. Obviously not the same level as what we saw years ago with Patrick Mahomes. But for me, at least, looking at their schedule, the game I kind of like out of conference is Houston, just so we can kind of a preview of what we're going to see next year.
Yeah.
Other than that, they do have some good receivers. Miles Price coming back. They brought in Baylor Cupp as a tight end from A&M. I think that would be a good fit. But Texas Tech, I think, I don't know, who's to say? Big 12 is always like a crapshoot in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
And I think realistically, this is kind of a. I think they're going to make a bowl game. It's going to be a toss-up.
Yeah, honestly, I think Texas Tech, between Texas and Texas Tech, they have the hardest schedule because they have Houston. Then right after that, they have to play NC State, who's supposed to be really good. We went over NC State when we did the ACC earlier, and a lot of people have NC State winning that conference. So, and they have that back-to-back against Houston, and right after that, they have Texas, and that's a hard 3-game stretch right there.
Yeah, Houston, NC State, Texas is going to be hard, and then they do play Kansas State. I think that's kind of a relaxing game before they travel to Stillwater. So Texas Tech is going to kind of have a slump towards the beginning, but it's all about how they finish. It's going to depend if they make a bowl or not.
Yeah. So next, we're going to West Virginia.
Mountain Mama.
Yeah. With the number 4 recruiting class in the conference, 35 in the nation, who lost to Minnesota in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl with a 6-7 record last year, and they have a new rivalry game or renewed rivalry game in the backyard brawl against Pitt this week with 2 ex-USC quarterbacks, which one I'm pretty sure Keaton Slovis was JT Daniels' backup. So I'm ready to see this game this week. Maybe we'll be able to watch it together this week, which I am coming to Memphis this weekend. So
yeah, well, this is tomorrow night.
Oh no, never mind. I probably won't be able to see it tomorrow.
Yeah, by the way, we're recording on Wednesday, so this will probably come out before, or this will come out after the game, so we're going in blind.
Yeah.
But this was a rivalry that always flew under the radar when they were both in the Big East. They hate each other.
Yeah.
Passionately. People don't remember how much they hated each other, but I'm glad this rivalry's back, and I'm glad that we get to see it in prime time tomorrow night. Kaden Slovis versus JT Daniels. JT Daniels obviously won a national championship with Georgia last year, and for me at least, the thing that's not talked about enough is their new offensive coordinator, former Texas Tech quarterback Graham Harrell, who, if you remember, mid 2000s was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I want to see him implement that with JT Daniels and that offense. It's not the same offense that we grew up with, Tavon Austin, probably one of the best receivers we'll ever see in college football.
Yeah.
But I do think West Virginia as a whole is kind of on that bottom tier Big 12 side. They joined the conference 10 years ago, but, it's not the same Geno Smith when they were electric. But I do think West Virginia, and they don't have Dana Holgorsen anymore.
Yeah.
Who's at Houston, who's coming to the conference next year. But I do think West Virginia is. It mostly depends on what happens tomorrow night. I think if they do beat Pitt, and they're kind of a steady track of kind of finishing that bowl game, if it's not a pretty game, then I think it is gonna, they're gonna regress a little.
Well, after Pitt, they do have 2 cupcake games, I would say, with Kansas and Townsend. So if they lose to Pitt, hey, they can always bounce back. But the the back end of their schedule is really tough.
Mm-hmm.
So
finishing out 2 of their last 3 games against the 2 Oklahoma teams is going to be brutal for them.
Yeah, for sure. So, Will, you ready to go on your let's talk about our record predictions and who we think is going to win Big 12.
So there are no divisions. It's all just one big conference. Top 2 teams go on. I think that Oklahoma is going to finish on top. They're going to lose one game. That one game, it's either going to come down to Oklahoma State or Texas, and those 2 teams I think are going to fight for second. And I think the winner of that game will go on to the Big 10 or Big 12 championship, and I think that team, surprisingly, as much as we give them crap, it's going to be Texas. I think this
you think so?
This is Sark's statement year. So Oklahoma State will be 3rd. After them, I have Baylor in 4th at 9-3. It's kind of a down year from last year, but I still think they're really good. And then after that, it's kind of mediocre. going down the line. I have three teams going 6-6 at least, and that's Iowa State, Kansas State, and TCU. Texas Tech is kind of outside looking at 5-7. West Virginia, like I said, kind of a regress at 4-8, and then lastly Kansas 2-10. If you're lucky, you'll win one conference game.
Yeah, I don't have Kansas actually winning a conference game this year, but I do have Oklahoma going undefeated, which I can see them losing one or two games. I feel like them and Baylor will be playing for the Big 12 championship, which I have Baylor going 11-1, and I have Oklahoma State 9-2, 7-2 in the conference. Then I have Texas 8-4, Texas Tech 6-6, TCU, aka Fort Worth University, going 7-5, making a bowl game, but losing to Texas Tech, so they're falling 6th in the standings. But I do have West Virginia going 6-6. I have Kansas just missing out on a bowl game, with 5-7, and I have Iowa State with 3-9, making a huge drop because of the Brock Purdy and Breece Hall loss. And I have, who's in last place with 2-10.
Fortunately, again, at least they won a championship in basketball this year.
Hey, yeah. Hey, maybe they have another good year in basketball, which we will talk about when that comes. So y'all be on the lookout. And guess what, guys? I did not take Jonathan Taylor first overall in fantasy just because we do a super flex. But I want y'all to leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and we'll be back the day after this is put on YouTube. So, and talking about new subjects, so you won't have the conference previews anymore. We will be having the big games coming up this week, sleeper games we have this week. We have probably we do pick'ems also, and we will also have a little betting. Let's see who can make some money this weekend. We have some betting odds for you. So thank y'all for watching today, and leave a like and comment down below.
Yep, and for these games, we may be having someone come in to do guest picks. So be on the lookout for that. This has been wrapping up college previews. Bryce, it's been a pleasure, ranting at you about all these random teams.
Yeah.
But I'm excited college football's back.
Yeah, me too. Week 1, I'm ready for us to debate on games and who we think going to win what game, or what team is legit and who's not. But thank y'all for watching, and see y'all soon.